Hello, everyone. I'm Mariana Meerhoff. I'm a professor at the Universidad de la República in Uruguay, and I'm also a vice president of SIL, the International Society of Limnology, chairing the Education Committee. And today I will show a few guidelines and tips to prepare a good research application. So SIL wants to support projects from underrepresented researchers, and you may wonder why is that? And this is because we believe that diversity is important for the quality of science. As it happens with nature, diversity promotes higher diversity. Diversity also promotes productivity. And a series of other consequences of having a diverse community producing science is that we have better chances of testing ecological theories and also of producing different theories, of asking different questions. And that implies a greater understanding of the environmental and limnological problems around the world. And that gives us higher chances of contributing to solve problems at the local, regional, and global problems. So overall, we do believe that having a higher diversity of researchers producing science does result in a greater impact of science and innovation. But there are certain barriers that prevent a true diverse community, and there are different factors affecting that. So one is age, another bigger one is gender, and the last and even bigger is the barrier produced by the origin and context of the researchers. And by context and origin, we mean the economic context of the country or the group, ethnicity, religion, geopolitical situation, cultural settings, even the symbolic context and the language barrier. All these factors are preventing that we have a truly diverse community. So why age? So we know that early career researchers, ECR, are among the most vulnerable groups in the current scientific context, and that's because everywhere or almost everywhere in the world there's a high job insecurity, and often being an early academic means that it happens at the same time as several major life decisions. For example, where to live, which country or region to settle, to have proper income, to build your own family, and so on. And often there's the funding available for ECR researchers is lower than the funds for more consolidated or senior researchers. And at the same time, while all this is happening, there is a high pressure to produce many and often high quality papers. So overall, this group is very vulnerable. And then we have gender. We know that women are underrepresented in many dimensions of academic life that provide prestige, and we know that prestige is truly important in academia because that produces a feedback. The more prestigious you are, the more chances you have to get funding, to get more papers, to get recognized, that your research has more impact. Here in this figure, we can see the representation of females. So this is the dotted line, is the 50-50 male and female participation in different dimensions, like the plenary talks in limnological congresses, the awardees of very prestigious awards, the boards of scientific society, and the female participation in the boards of different journals. And in all these dimensions, we see a lower representation of women. And there's a clear, many papers say that there's a strong gender bias in meetings, plenaries, awards, the main author or corresponding author in papers, the co-author lists, and so on. And almost everywhere, but very generally in most parts of the world, there are very few mechanisms that attempt to address the specific situations that female researchers often face, such as maternity and caring activities for members of their families or their communities, and also the prejudice and other barriers. And as I was mentioning before, the origin of the researchers is the main barrier preventing a truly diverse and fair community of researchers. So we know that several countries kind of dominate the landscape of scientific production in ecology and in limnology. And many countries in the world are, here we see the map, they're shrunk, meaning that the volume of papers produced in ecology are much lower than their true size. So that this, what is often called the global north or versus the global south situation, based on all these factors that I was mentioning before, are affecting the productivity of researchers in all these regions of the world. So I was saying before that SIL aims to really support these underrepresented researchers, and because we believe that these inequalities have to be reduced if we want to reach a truly diverse and more fair and more just scientific community worldwide. So SIL has a variety of tools such as awards and research grants, and that's where these tips fit. So what is a research proposal, a research project that you may submit for these grants? So this is one of the most creative and free steps in the academic life. But the fact that it's creative, that you can put all your ideas and test your hypothesis and try and find novel ways of testing those new ideas, it doesn't mean that it's not organized and not rigorous. So there are a series of steps that need to be followed in order to produce a good proposal. And this is the chance that we have to get with a research project of creating new and relevant knowledge and new ways of interpreting our world. So there are a few tips that I would like to share with you, and some are before preparing the proposal. So before you do that, I think it's very important that you carefully review the official research call and the award or the award guidelines. Make sure that you meet the criteria to be eligible. For example, the stage in your career. Pay attention to the submission deadlines and the required documents, and make sure that you have those required documents well in advance, so don't wait until last minute to find the documents that you need. So every proposal will have a certain structure, and that's normally given in the different calls. But very often, all the proposals will go through these different steps. Some are more explicit and others are implicit, but in all the proposals, you have to go through the theoretical framework and the background knowledge on the particular subject. So here, it's advanced advice that you move from the most general to the most specific. So from the broad topics to leading to the specific question or issue that you will address. Very often you are asked about the justification of your research, the aims of your specific research, and the questions and hypotheses associated to those questions. Then follows a section that asks for the approach that you will follow and the methods to answer that or those questions. Another section often asks for the expected results and the impact of your research, the research ethics, involves, so including legal requirements that changes from place to place and country to country. Another section could ask about the outcomes of the project, so how you plan to disseminate your results, the timeline, and the budget. So these are the most typical sections that will be asked, and it's good that you make sure that all this is answered. So we'll go through a few of them. So, but first, before going into detail, I would like to share with you some of the most often reasons of rejection. And one of the most seen reasons of rejection, and that proposals are purely descriptive. So there's no theoretical framework or no testable hypothesis, just a very descriptive question to describe a pattern of something happening. So that's the main reason for a proposal being rejected. Other of the reasons for rejection is what it's called the my lake approach, or my lake, my pond, my stream, my species, whatever. But it's the approach of believing that the work will be relevant for everyone just because it hasn't been done or it hasn't been studied in our country or in our type of ecosystem or our particular case species model and so on. So the fact that they are not studied well enough compared to other places doesn't mean it's going to be relevant for everyone. Another of the major reasons of rejection is to have a bad or poor design and highly inappropriate statistics associated to that design. Another one is to have very limited or narrow focus, which is connected in a way to the My Lake approach. That is to study just, for example, a species or a taxonomic group without putting into context and without going through the potential implications for other ecologists or for understanding broader problems or questions. Then a general unclarity of the proposal, it's also making good ideas being rejected because they're not transmitted with sufficient clarity or with a very poor language. So here are a few tips to enhance the chances of your research proposal. So, and with this, I will go through a bit more detail in some of them. So first of all is that you make sure that you justify the relevance of the topic and of your research to you, so to your location, but also to a global audience. Then outline well-defined objectives, methodology, and the expected outcomes. Make sure that the hypothesis is well-defined. So the hypothesis is the mechanism of the expected outcome, why things are happening. So make sure that your hypothesis is strong and well defined and matching all the theoretical framework. Be very specific about your approach. That means, are you doing fieldwork? Are you doing field experiment? Lab experiments? Are you working with modeling? Are you working with data? How is the data collection and the data analysis techniques that you will apply? Make sure that the timeline is realistic and it matches the call. So the time frame covered by the call has to be aligned with the timeline of your project. And it's also nice to see milestones associated to the timeline. So that tells the reviewer that you know what you will expect and when you will achieve those milestones. Make sure that you are well aware of the ethical considerations and the potential research challenges at your place. Reviewers will not necessarily know what are your obligations regarding, for example, animal experimentation or fieldwork that implies animals or wild fauna. So make sure that you're aware of that and you comply with the requirements at your place. Then the budget. It has to be justified in accordance to the funding offered by the call. So if your project is very expensive compared to the funding that is available, then it might not be awarded. So if you have other sources of support, make sure that you mention them, what you have with you that will help you conduct your research. So going back to the justification, why is that important? In a nutshell, you have to convince that your research has to be funded and not others. So it's all about selling your idea in a good way. And to do that, you need to present a clear, innovative research question that is relevant to the field. In our case, limnology, but overall ecology or any other field that you are working. You need to justify the scientific importance and the potential contribution to freshwater science, and not just to you. Remember what I said before, the mind-like approach. So it doesn't have to be important just for your place. It has to have something that is relevant to a global understanding. Then highlight how your research aligns with a specific mission and priorities, for example, of SIL. So make sure that you know if you're applying, for example, a project to a conservation agency, then the conservation impact of your research has to be very clear and explicit. If you have preliminary data, then show it. Say that you have that data. Make sure that you're demonstrating that you can construct new knowledge based on what has already been done. So novelty is one crucial factor. So because if your work is novel and you're not doing the same as other people have done before, then you have higher chances of having higher impact research, not just a high impact paper, which is very important for your career and also for the funding agency, but the research itself has a higher capacity of making a broader impact. Then the study design. This is perhaps the most crucial part of your work, and you need to spend some time on that, making sure that the study design is well planned. And that's super important because having a proper design allows you to test hypotheses and obtain results that are useful. And also, the proper design allows for the application of appropriate statistics. So, if the design is bad, then there's no statistics that will save you afterwards. But if the design is good, you may not be super solid now in statistics, but you can have advice and you can, in a way, solve it a bit. But with designs that are poor, then there's no way out. And also, having a good design will be the most balanced equilibrium between the effort, so your effort and the effort of your team, if you have the funding that you have, and also that will secure that the damage that you produce with the research to wildlife, for example, or to the environment is minimal, because a good design will allow you to have a proper number of samples, proper number of animals if you're running experiments, for example, and to minimize suffering. So that's why, for different reasons, this step is super important and you need to devote time for it. Then we have this section on impact and dissemination of your results. And that's also an important part of the proposal because here you describe how your research will contribute to the state of the art in your field. It's important that you mention relevant audiences for your results, for example, social actors, stakeholders, policymakers, NGOs, general public, or just the scientific community, but whoever you think can be potentially interested in your results, it's important that you mention those. Also explain how you will share your findings, for example, through congresses at the national level, international level, what publications you plan to to write and produce. If you're planning any public outreach activities such as flyers, activities, videos in social media, mass media, like newspaper notes, talks in the TV, or talks to general public, to teachers, schools, or if you will contribute to policy briefs. So whatever way you think it's the best to share your findings, it's important that you mention those. And also, if applicable, discuss open access data sharing. What's the policy about sharing the data that you produce? That's most often asked nowadays, and will continue to do so in the future, so it's good that you have that idea beforehand. So when you write the proposal, it has to be clear and professional. I mentioned that poor clarity or poor language was one of the reasons for rejecting proposals. So it's advised that you use concise, well-structured, and without jargon language. And also avoid localisms or expressions that are very specific to a given culture or a given moment, because we cannot expect that everyone will understand if we talk with, if we mention things that not everyone will be aware. Then make sure that you follow the call format and the word count requirements, that you use expressions to highlight the significance of your work without pushing too much. And nowadays, there's no excuse for poor language, because you can get assistance for any artificial intelligence tools that can help you correct the English if it's a proposal to be written in English, and to increase the precision and accuracy of what you say. But it's very important that you do not use AIs to write the proposal, but to help you make the proposal more rigorous and well written. And then there are a few tips to demonstrate your capacity for this particular research. So if you have a section, try to highlight your academic background and the relevant skills or previous work that you have conducted that will help you do this particular research. It's nice to show how this funding will advance your career and also contribute to your group if you belong to a research group. So that's also nice for reviewers to see that they're funding you, but that will have an impact. And then mention collaboration with other researchers or institutions if they will be part of the project in one way or another. So in a nutshell, there are a few general tips to enhance the impact of your research in general, not just the chances of getting some grants. So above all, be familiar and updated with the general and specific theoretical frameworks of the topic you're working on, and always try and develop appropriate hypotheses to be tested, and be as solid as possible. So be as updated as you can. And for that, you need to be reading the literature, ask foreign colleagues to send you updated literature on the issue. Add complexity to the questions and the topic you're working on. So it's to enrich your research, you could combine different approaches, such as fieldwork together with experiments, also modeling, and not all the approaches are expensive or they have different costs. For example, conducting systematic reviews or meta-analysis of published data can be done with a very low economic costs, but that will add complexity to your research and will make your research more interesting for a broader audience. Also be updated with current statistical methods and approaches. And always consider the implications for the different levels of ecological organization. So even if you work with a species or with a population, then try to elaborate what are the mechanisms behind your patterns. So that will imply going to one organization level, and then also think about the implications for the other organization levels as well. And as I have mentioned through all the talk, consider the implications or potential relevance to other places of the world, not just your place, and to the theoretical framework as such. And always tries and search for real and fair cooperation with other colleagues in your country, in your region, and internationally as well. So please have a look at SIL website and see all the different funding options and opportunities that we offer. So there might be some that can be good for you. Also, if you want to be informed about SIL activities, you can follow us in the different social media and subscribe to the YouTube channel when we upload different materials for different audiences and education materials. Okay, so with this, I thank you for your attention and wish you good luck with all your research career. Stay in touch.